My stepmother doesn't want me to go to university because it would hurt her son and my father supports him, but now they want me to give back my own money. Where to start? I'm 20 years old and have cut off contact with my family, especially my father. The others don't matter to me. Everything began 2 years ago when I got into a prestigious university. It was the happiest day of my life. I had worked tirelessly for years, sacrificing my sleep, social life and even my mental health to ensure I had the grades and extracurriculars needed to get accepted. Getting into a top university wasn't just about prestige. It was about proving to myself that all my hard work was worth it. I was ecstatic, and when I told my father, he was thrilled, dancing and hugging me. However, his wife and her son weren't thrilled. The family dynamic is a bit complicated. My mother passed away when I was 12 and 3 years later, my father remarried this woman. Let's call her Jessica. She always wanted me to call her mom, but I just couldn't. Jessica never really liked me. She's the kind of person who thinks the world revolves around her. And her main priority has always been to make sure her son, Billy, didn't feel less in any way. Billy is a year older than me, but a complete slacker. Like his mother, he didn't work, study or have any future plans. He simply lived off our parents. I mostly kept my distance from them. I didn't care what he did with his life until Jessica started playing dirty to keep me from achieving my dreams. And that's when the conflict began. When I told them about my acceptance, Jessica gave my father a strange look and all his excitement vanished as he sat down next to her. I asked what was wrong and she said, "It's just surprising that you got accepted so quickly." Then, with a doubtful tone, she asked when I had applied and how I planned to manage the costs. I replied, "My mother left money for my tuition. I'm going to use that." She looked at my father and said, "Oh, that money. You should have informed us of your plans." I wasn't in the mood to argue. So I answered politely, I didn't have high hopes of getting accepted. It wasn't easy. So I wanted to wait for the results before telling anyone. She didn't seem satisfied with my response and continued to question me as if I were being interrogated. I told them the dates I'd be leaving and asked my father to settle my fund as soon as possible. Since I was born, my mother had set aside money in a trust for my tuition. After her death, it was left under my father's control until I turned 18. Jessica and my father were less than thrilled. In fact, they were completely against it. They didn't see this as a life-changing opportunity for me. They saw it as a threat. The next morning, my father shyly suggested I consider enrolling in a nearby community college, and dropped the idea of going to such an expensive university. Naturally, I got upset and asked what was going on. He kept giving me the same response. "I'm just scared of sending you so far away." No matter how much I pressed, that's all he'd say. I broke down. Who wouldn't? Instead, he asked me to give up on my dreams. Finally, he broke down himself and admitted, he's worried Billy would feel hurt. I lost it, yelling, "Why on earth is he trying to control my life?" Jessica entered the room at that moment and I realized she had been eavesdropping. She said she was proud of my achievements but, as parents, they needed to be fair to both children. She said it wasn't fair for me to go to a top university while my brother went to a community college. I was speechless. Billy, who had never lifted a finger in his life, was suddenly the victim because I had achieved something. I argued that I had worked relentlessly for 2 years, sacrificing all my happiness, comfort and leisure for my dream. And now they were tearing it apart because it made Billy look like a failure. I wasn't going to accept that. Jessica got angry when I called Billy a failure. Although it was the truth, he's lazy. He does nothing all day, stares at my friends when they visit and spreads rumors about me and them. Billy, who was at home, joined Jessica in ganging up on me saying I had no right to comment on him or raise my voice. Jessica even tried to hit me, but I dodged. I'm not some thug who fights like she does. I told her if she tried that again, I'd report her to the police for some suspicious activities she and her friends were involved in at her buddy's shop. She backed down immediately, cursing and calling me names. I told Jessica and my father that I was going to university whether they liked it or not, and that's when things really went south. Jessica threatened to cut me off financially unless I dropped the idea. She said the money my mother left was under my father's control and they would ensure I didn't see a penny if I kept going with my plan. She even had the nerve to suggest I take a gap year to reconsider my decision and give Billy time to get his life together. I looked at my father, hoping he'd support me and asked, "Can you please back me up?" But instead, he started crying and said, "What can I do? I'm torn between you two. We need to respect her wishes. She's the head of the household." Head of the household? What nonsense. I stormed out after saying that. It was the first time I'd spoken like that in front of my father. I spent the day at a friend's place and when I came back late that night, my father approached me upset about how things had escalated that morning. I thought he regretted not standing up for me, but boy was I wrong. He told me that my decision was ruining his marriage and asked if my dream of attending an elite university was worth risking his marriage. I was speechless. I felt like I was living in an alternate universe where logic didn't exist. He begged me to listen to Jessica, not for my own good, but because he feared his marriage would fall apart if he didn't feed his wife's fragile ego. I lost it and told him I was sick of being manipulated by his tears. And if his marriage was so fragile, maybe it wasn't worth saving. Then came the worst part. He got aggressive and gave me an ultimatum. Choose her and go to community college, or choose my dream university and leave forever. It might have been an impossible decision for most people, but for me, it was crystal clear. I looked him straight in the eyes and told him I had a better option. He should choose between me and his wife. And guess what? He chose her. It wasn't a surprise. He and Jessica tried to withhold my mother's fund from me, but I involved my mom's lawyer, a single call from him, and they handed over the documents and check. I packed my things and left for university, and I haven't looked back since. Now I'm in my second year of a 4-year program. I'm not going to say I'm living my best life or anything like that. Getting accepted into these universities is one thing. Graduating from them is another. You have to sweat and bleed for that degree, which is why it's so prestigious. So, all this drama happened 2 years ago. Just last week, my father started texting me asking how I was doing. Yesterday, he told me he'd come to visit. I replied that I didn't want to see him, but he sent me a picture of his plane ticket anyway. He said he was sorry and wanted to fix things. Now I'm confused. Part of me wants to ignore him, but the innocent, naive part of me wants to confront him, hear what he has to say, and maybe even ask about his toxic marriage. I'm curious, how's that going? If they're even still together. What do you think? Update 1. Apologies for the delayed update. I gave some details in the comments, but here's the full story. After much thought, I met with my father. At first, everything was warm and pleasant. I gave him a tour of the city, took him out to dinner, and we both avoided the elephant in the room. Finally, on the day he was about to leave, he brought it up. He started by saying, "It's been so fun spending these 2 days with you. It brought back so many memories from your childhood." I replied, "I wish it was still that way. Everything was so good when Mom was around. Even after she was gone, I still enjoyed spending time with you when it was just us." He interrupted. "Yes, but we have a family now and we should all respect each other. It would have been so nice if Jessica and Billy had come with us and we could have enjoyed it together as a family." At that moment, my perspective on him changed completely. I wanted to stop him right there, but I decided to let him continue to see where this was going. He continued, "Jessica loves you as much as she loves Billy. She was upset because she was scared to send you so far away. There was another reason she opposed your tuition. She wanted to use that money to fund her business, but I didn't give it to her. I gave it to you. I chose you over her. That's why she threw a little tantrum. You know how women act when they don't get what they want, especially when it comes to money. They get cranky." Then, after babbling about nonsense and beating around the bush, he said, "Dear, I was wondering if you could call Jessica and apologize, or maybe invite her here this weekend. I'm sure she'd forgive you if you made an effort." I looked at him in disbelief and he brushed it off, saying, "Oh, come on, be a man, just say you're sorry and make things right." Apparently, he wanted me to apologize for causing problems and tension in his marriage. I was furious. He wasn't just asking me to apologize for something I had every right to do, pursuing a quality education, but also acting as if I were responsible for his wife's bad behavior. I told him outright, "I'm not apologizing to that witch." He lost his temper and raised his voice. "You've turned into a selfish brat. All you care about is yourself. You've caused problems in my marriage and I'm the one who has to deal with the consequences of your stupid decision. My wife is suffering financially because I didn't invest in her business and gave the money to you instead. And now I have to deal with her tantrums. I only asked you to apologize and smooth things over. Is that too much to ask?" I replied, "Hold on. You didn't do me a favor by giving me my money. That money was rightfully mine. Mom saved it for me and it's in her will. You either need some guts or get a divorce if your wife is making your life so miserable. If you're in trouble as you claim, it's because you chose a terrible woman as a partner." He grabbed his bag and left. I was supposed to take him to the airport, but after that argument, I didn't want any more contact with him. He probably took a taxi or a bus. I don't know and I don't care. That's it. I plan to continue having no contact with them just as I've done for the past 2 years. End of family drama. Now, back to working my butt off for my degree. Update 2. It's been a while, 2 years, to be exact. I'm not sure if the people who read my earlier posts are still here, but I'm posting this update anyway. As I said, I didn't keep in touch with my father or anyone else. However, a few months later, my father started reaching out again. He'd send regular messages asking about me, birthday and Christmas cards, voicemails and calls. I usually didn't respond to his calls or messages, though sometimes I'd reply with a quick, "Thanks for his well wishes." I even told him twice to stop bothering me, that I didn't want a father who couldn't be there for me during hard times. But he kept at it, as if he was performing some sort of ritual. I stopped caring. I made my life at university and now I'm about to graduate and earn my bachelor's degree. The good news is I've already secured a job. I got an amazing offer through my university internship. I can't say the company's name, but it's a major one. That's the advantage of attending a prestigious university. It opens a lot of doors. I'm on my way to building a good future for myself. But, as always, my father isn't far off, trying to inject his drama into my life. As my graduation day approaches, my father has been bombarding my phone, asking for an invitation. Apparently, he and Jessica want to attend my graduation to celebrate my success, in his words. I told him flat out, no, there was no way I'd let the people who actively tried to sabotage my education show up and pretend they'd supported me all along. They don't deserve to share in my success after doing everything possible to prevent it. He didn't take no for an answer and kept pushing for an invitation. His messages ranged from sad, saying he couldn't believe I didn't want him there, to trying to guilt trip me, saying he's my father and raised me as best he could. But I didn't buy any of it. He says seeing my graduation is like a dream come true for him and that I'm denying him that moment of happiness, but I didn't budge. Now my finals are over, the results are in. I got the job and my graduation ceremony is this Friday. I didn't tell my father about the job, but last week, a friend of mine posted a story congratulating me on the offer and I shared it on my Instagram. That's how they found out. Since then, Jessica has been calling me nonstop, without sending any messages, just calling. I ignored her calls for a while, but then I thought, I'll confront her. I answered and she got straight to the point. Summing up, she said, "Kid, I don't know what game your father is playing. I don't understand it and I don't care. All I know is you owe me the money you took. You used up all the money we had for college. I needed that money for my business and your mother gave it to you. I hear you landed an impressive job, so now I want you to give me that money back." I laughed in her face, well, not literally since it was a call. I told her, I don't owe you a cent. That money was my mother's and no one has any right to it, not even my father. She lost it and yelled, "Then why did your father tell me he had so much money when we were dating?" I asked him to put it in my business, but he kept putting it off and then he gave it to you. I was done listening to her. I yelled back, "I don't want to be in the middle of your problems. They don't concern me and I don't care. All I know is I don't owe anything to anyone. That money was rightfully mine. Saved by my mom and it's in her will." She started cursing my father and said, "I have no idea what that man's plotting. He's been telling me he's been spoiling you and wants to attend your stupid day to get his money back. But my patience is wearing thin. I don't want to waste my time at your event. All I want is the money." That revelation hit me like a punch in the gut. So my father had been trying to manipulate me emotionally. Not happy or proud of my success as he claimed. But doing everything to get me to give him the money to hand over to Jessica. I didn't say anything else and just ended the call. She called me several more times, but I didn't answer and eventually blocked her. I also blocked my father, but before I did, I sent him a message saying Jessica had exposed his true intentions and I didn't want to call him dad anymore. I was in a daze for the next 2 days. I know my father is submissive and can't stand up to Jessica or Billy for their nonsense, but I didn't know he was so manipulative that he'd go behind my back and try to deceive me for money. I'm glad I didn't fall for his act all this time. Update 3, sorry for not updating as often. It's been difficult with everything going on in my life now. Work has been hectic and nothing significant happened until recently that seemed worth an update. To give you an idea of the timeline, it's been 7 months since my last update. Since the conversation with Jessica and my last message to my father. Everything had been quiet. I graduated, though none of my family was there to cheer me on. Only my friends. I started my career, am financially stable and am happy with the choices I made for myself. I thought the family drama was over for good until my father showed up at my office. He didn't know where I lived, but he found out where I worked and showed up there. I had to see him since he was waiting in the lobby. He started crying when he saw me and hugged me. I wanted to push him away, but I avoided any confrontation at work. I took him to a nearby cafe. He insisted I take him to my place, but I refused. He told me that Jessica had divorced him because he couldn't get the money back from me and now he was alone and wanted to rebuild our bond. I was shocked by how convenient it was for him to contact me, expressing his desire to reconcile as if nothing had happened. I confronted him about what I'd learned from Jessica. He said, "Sometimes people lie to save a relationship, but that doesn't mean I went behind your back. I never intended to give her your money. That's why I kept putting her off and eventually gave it to you, because it was yours." I lost my temper at his manipulations and asked why he had to lie to Jessica, then. He replied, "After your mother passed, I've been alone. I needed a partner. I hoped you'd understand this now that you're a grown man. Do you think she would have married me if I hadn't mentioned the money? Do you think she would have stayed if I told her I wouldn't give her the money? I did everything I could to keep the family together." I looked at him wondering if this was the same man who raised me, and whom I once loved so much. I told him, "You did nothing for the family. There was no family. Our family ended the day you brought that freeloader into our lives. You did everything for yourself because you were afraid of being alone." He started crying, saying marrying Jessica was the worst decision of his life and that now that they were divorced, I should give him a chance. I reminded him of all the times he chose her over me. He didn't betray me just once. He did it repeatedly. When I needed him most, he sided with the woman who tried to ruin my future. I told him I was done, that I no longer trusted him. He made his choice years ago and now he has to live with it. I'm not responsible for his loneliness or poor choices. I have my own life to live and I'm finally at peace. He said he came to see me with great hope and that his heart was now broken. I got up and said, "You reap what you sow." I returned to my office and told reception not to give my address or any details to anyone who came looking for me. I don't feel bad for cutting him off. He's my only family, but sometimes you have to make hard decisions to protect yourself. Update 4. This has been a quick update, but I felt I should post it because many of the questions I've been receiving are repetitive and I'm tired of answering them individually. So I thought it would be better to post an update answering everything in one go, especially regarding my stepmother's business as it has generated a lot of curiosity. So, to begin, my stepmother's or rather my ex-stepmother's business was pretty simple, but in my opinion, entirely unnecessary. It was a kind of birthday party planning service. In other words, if you wanted to throw a birthday party but didn't feel like planning it, she would handle everything for you. Sounds unnecessary? That's because it was. We weren't in a big city or a market where ordinary people needed such services. We didn't live somewhere with celebrities or people with tons of money. So few people were willing to hire someone just to organize a birthday party. The business was small because it was essentially a one-woman operation. Sometimes her son, my stepbrother, would help, but not much. It wasn't profitable, which shouldn't surprise anyone. That's why she wanted my money. Her idea was to expand the business, not just for birthdays but also for other events like small weddings, anniversaries, and such. She also wanted to buy equipment like lights, sound, and decor to offer full services. This is something I hadn't mentioned before, but now I can discuss it openly since she's no longer part of my life or family. Many of you have also asked about my stepbrother and his activities. Well, my stepbrother and his friends would hang out in a car workshop owned by one of them. The shop had a questionable reputation because not all the work they did was strictly legal. You know, things a legitimate shop wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. For some reason, my stepmother always hoped her son would leave that kind of lifestyle and get his act together, but I never saw him do anything about it. Occasionally, he'd work in the shop, but it wasn't stable, nor did he aspire to do something bigger. It's not like he'd give it up to find a real job or go to college. And the most disappointing thing about all this is that my father knew all of this. He knew exactly who Jessica was and who her son was. He knew they didn't have the best intentions and that her business was going nowhere. And still, instead of supporting me and putting his own flesh and blood first, he chose to side with them. That's the part that hurts the most. Any decent father would have ended that marriage immediately. He shouldn't have married a woman like that to begin with. But after much thought, I believe my father has always had this emptiness since my mother's death. Instead of seeking professional help to cope with his grief and loneliness, he decided the best solution was to find a replacement. Unfortunately, the replacement he chose was Jessica. I hope this clears up many questions and saves me from answering them one by one in the comments. Update 5. After several months without checking in and since no one has had further questions, I've come back with a brief update on my father. I haven't had contact with him all this time, but I've heard some things thanks to people who still live in my town. Apparently, my father has found a new partner and most surprisingly, or perhaps not so much, it's a friend of Jessica's. I don't know her personally, nor do I know the nature of their relationship, but I hope it's not the same as the one he had with Jessica, which was more about money than a real connection. However, knowing my father and knowing this woman is a friend of Jessica's, I don't have high expectations. Despite this, I have no intention of rekindling a relationship with my father. My decision to cut ties remains firm and I don't plan to meet this new woman in his life. Plus, even if my father decides to come back asking for money, we all know how that will end. You and I all know he won't get anything from me. It seems my father is stuck in his pattern of looking for someone to fill that emotional void he's had since my mother died. And while I feel sorry for him, it's no longer my problem. I genuinely hope it's not that kind of relationship, but there's not much I can do to help him since it's not as if he ever listened to me anyway.